I see you still have the same chemistry that you have on screen.
I don't know, do we?
I don't know.
We have to spend a lot of time together, so I think we're doing well, all things considered.
Yes.
Is that something that immediately came, or is it something that you had to craft and work at?
It kind of, I think, much like the journey of the two characters in the movie, it sort of develops like any relationship or friendship. The early stages was filled with a lot of, what did your folks do? Where are you from? What do you like? What's your favorite food? And then, you know.
We had long talks about what Luke's favorite food is.
Yeah, we had long talks.
And you had some sex scenes that were very intimate, but also very funny.
Yeah.
So what was the toughest about getting them right?
I mean, funny is funny. What was the toughest thing about getting it right? Is that even within the sort of over sort of comedic aspect of them, they still felt kind of true.
Yeah.
You know, that even though, you know, it's about sticking a foot in my mouth, that there's actually something that is really about these two guys wanting to show that they're like tough and dominant to each other. So the truth of that sort of sexual sort of tension is actually where the comedy comes from. We're both trying to, it began with a wrestling match, which is so much what the dating experience for two guys like us is. Yeah.
Why is it important for you to be funny?
It's the way I see the world. You know, I think it's the most honest way to see the world. It's whenever something really dramatic's happened in my life, always something weird has happened with it. When I watch a movie that's purely dramatic, I a little bit call bullshit on it and think it's not real, you know? And so it literally is how I see stuff. I think it's like, in addition to I love laughing and all of that, it's really the most honest way for me at least to experience the world.
How do you make sure as a director that your movies are funny? What craft goes into it to sculpt a funny thing?
It's that's a good question. It's it's tone. It's a lot of tone. It's really digging deep into the characters and making sure all the movies I've made are dramas.
Yeah.
Like they're dramatically structured. These are characters with big problems who haven't faced those problems usually at the beginning of the film. And I mean, this is true of any really great comedy. And so it's a lot of conversations about what the movie's about and what the characters are dealing with and what what the thematics are. Even something like Neighbors, which is a crazy Bad Neighbors here, is a movie about Zac Efron's having a nervous breakdown about graduating from college, and Rose and Seth are having nervous breakdowns about having their first child. So that is also dramatic in its way, and so I think with Bros it was Billy and I talked about what is he going through, what's this character going through, what's Luke's character going through, and then from that you find all the jokes.
And you start working with Billy. How did you come across him, and when did you decide, well, I want to do this movie with him?
So I knew him from he has a TV show called Billy on the Street. It's really funny. I cast him in Bad Neighbors 2, and then I cast him in this show called Friends from College, and he really impressed me with his acting. I didn't know he was a really good actor. He was great in that. And then we screened the first episode of that in a movie theater, and every time he was on screen, he was hysterical, and the audience exploded. And I was like, oh, he's a movie star. And so I approached him about building this movie around him, and he was into it.
Billy is a very personal story to you, especially comes out when you give the speech about having to work extra hard as an LGBT person in a very heteronormative, cis male-oriented society. How much of that is your character Bobby, and how much of your own self bleeds into that?
A lot of it was inspired, the feelings of it were inspired by my real life. The details aren't the same. But that part was certainly inspired by a lot of experiences I've had, and that I think a lot of other gay men and LGBTQ people, especially those of us of a certain generation and older, have had. Thankfully, I think younger generations, those 10 years younger than me or more, are they've walked into a more welcoming world, not a perfect world by any means, but a much more welcoming world, especially in Hollywood. When I was starting out and I was always openly gay professionally, as an openly gay man trying to do comedy in America 20 plus years ago, comedy especially was a very alpha male, straight male dominated world. And so, that came with a lot of challenges and obstacles, and I think that's part of what that speech on the beach is about. And also I think it was important for the movie to, even though it's a very celebratory movie about the LGBTQ experience and a very uplifting, hopeful, funny movie, I think it was important that we took a moment to acknowledge all those who came before who did not get the types of opportunities that we're getting in making this movie, simply because Hollywood or the world, wasn't ready for it, which is so ridiculous and infuriating, but it is the truth.
It's so crazy. One of the things I learned in the movie, speaking of sort of the comedy world, like, as brilliant as Eddie Murphy is, the beginning of Delirious begins with him using the word faggot so many times. Dude, where's my car? The word faggot is dropped. Wayne's World, they call each other faggot. It's crazy because I lived,
and we grew up with,
all of that, and I didn't process it at the time. But just going back and going like, wow, that happened, and it's hard for us to remember that happened, and then still kind of want to claim ourselves and not feel guilty.
And it was so normalized.
Yeah.
These were like icons. I mean, I loved all of those movies.
I still love them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but we were kind of taught to just kind of take it and deal with it and not respond to it.
Yeah.
That we were taught that if we got too angry about it, we have this conversation in the movie on our first date, but we were essentially taught that if we got too angry about that we were lame.
Yeah.
That we were humorless because we didn't want to be degraded and dehumanized and be the butt of the joke.
Or too weak.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you take a story that is, in a way, quite personal to him, even though it's a separate thing. It's about certain characters and stuff is made fictional for the movie.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that personalness of a screenplay like that when you're going into that together?
I've done this now a few times. I mean, a lot of comedies are kind of like that. Historically, a lot of comedies are like that. Like, one of my favorite romantic comedies is When Harry Met Sally, and that was Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron talking about their love. And when you read about that movie, the history of that movie, they're talking about their love lives and all of that. And so it's the same with the movies I've done. Jason Segel and Sarah Marshall, it was a lot of him talking about getting dumped, and I would talk about that too. And Get Him to the Greek, Russell Brand talking about his addiction issues. And with this, it was a lot of talking. I think the emotional core of the movie is true to who Billy is, but the details of the story and that character is a little bit different than who Billy is. But the emotional core is a lot of what he and I would say is honest and true about some emotional stuff.
Yeah, and there's then stuff that Billy wants to do and you have to talk him out of, or the other way around?
We're constantly debating. You're constantly you're constantly tearing apart the movie. You have to be very hard on the script, and so we're always debating it. He's always telling me I'm wrong. I'm always telling him he's wrong. then I'm telling him he's right. Then he's like, we're just it's a constant debate. You have to have no ego.
Yeah.
When you're making a movie, you have to have all the ego and no ego at once.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
There's something also happening with a Dutch movie right now, which, like yours, is made for very wide appeal, but seems to have to work extra hard to make sure to tell people this is not just a niche product.
Huh. What's this movie? This
El Hub. It translates into The Love. Is that something that also bleeds into that conversation, having to work extra hard to get people?
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's a frustrating thing that you have to deal with, I mean, luckily, Judd Apatow, who produced the movie, and Nick Stoller, who wrote the movie with me and directed the movie, they're both straight. We never sat down and, concerned ourselves too much with, what straight people were going to understand or not understand. They're both straight men. They didn't know much about gay culture and about, the nuances of gay dating, but I explained it to them. Other people in the cast, other producers, gay people, explained it to them. And as long as it was funny and honest and the storytelling was clear, we didn't concern ourselves too much about it. And we just thought, well, if the storytelling is clear, the emotions will be relatable, even if the details of it are not. I mean, gay people have watched romantic comedies starring straight people literally our entire lives, and we relate to it and we love those movies, even though we don't exactly see ourselves in them. So there's no reason it shouldn't work in the reverse. And yet, because the straight audience hasn't really been asked to do that a lot, there might be some hesitation there, or just an assumption that they don't have to, or that it won't work, or that it's not for them, which of course is all very silly, because funny is funny and a good movie is a good movie. Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks a lot for that, and
Thank you.
good luck with promoting it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.